wants to read for the open mic. Justin said he's amenable if we want him to read. But I know that Ken wants to read some poems, so I'm just going to call up Ken Gerke and have him read you some poems. Yeah.
Both of you guys, fantastic.
Thanks. Some high-level stuff tonight.
Yeah. Every year we would go to Michigan when I was a kid to visit my aunt and uncle. So
Cool.
a couple of aunts and uncles. So Romulus, Ann Arbor, Ypsilanti, Whitmore Lake. Yeah.
So the whole I-94 corridor.
Yeah. Okay. I have a friend, Robert Okaji, and I've been reading his poetry for reading a different poet, reading a different poet. And so I'm going to read another one of his. Bob was diagnosed with late-stage lung cancer in April of last year. He had been having some major health issues, and finally in April, late-stage metastatic liver, brain, lymphatic system. So he's gone through several rounds of immunotherapy. He did radiation recently because the problems with his brain again. But he's publishing like crazy, and he put out a blog last week in which he said, you know what, I've had all this stuff, it's time to get all of this out. So he's got a couple books, a couple chapbooks coming out. And Bob can write and talk about cooking and preparing meals like nobody's business. And work it into a poem, and you're like, wow, So I'm going to read one of his poems, which is really appropriate. This was published about 6 years ago, but it's appropriate, I think, for his current situation. Because you cook, you know the pleasure of hunger, of patience and a task well done. Dice onions, peppers, one hot, one sweet. Saute them in olive oil. Fold them into an egg cooked flat. Add crumbled goat cheese, basil. Look away. Morning ascends, then declines, but night drifts in, confident, ferrying those odors among others. Accept what comes, but choose wisely. Light the candle, shift the burden.
How would we find his stuff when we were looking for it?
He actually has a blog on WordPress, and actually if you put his name into Amazon, I'm sure you'll find it there.
Okay. Yeah, I'm interested.
Robert Okaji. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's terminal. He knows his days are numbered, and so. Okay, I'll do 3 poems of my own. Grief magnified. Grief held me for years, not as captive, but its leash would pull when least expected. Thoughts of your past, ours, found memories that could bite as well as bring a smile. Her sorrow for your absence, evident at first, seemed masked as time went on. Then she was gone. 15 years without you, more than she could bear. Just like that, my grief, though renewed, was as nothing. The weight of her own far greater than any I could imagine. This is one I wrote last night. Summer, 67. Railroad tracks. Oh yeah, this is like a cliff notes of that summer. Summer, 67. Railroad tracks. Walking to school. Balanced on rails. Watching the ties the next day for flattened pennies. Like panning for gold in my 14th year. Late on a summer night, walking the streets, the tracks, when parents thought the sleeping bags in the yard held boys tired from a long day. Climbing the train bridge, over the canal, across iron beams and up a narrow ladder in the dark to sit atop the concrete counterweight, a platform for daylights brave divers. Sprinting like hell to catch the runner in a pickup game of football, fast enough to impress someone who knew how to run well enough to convince me track was in my future. Back to school, last year of junior high. No more summers like that in my future. But maybe a penny or two. Maybe more when I can spare a dime. And lastly, from Hair and Spirit, which came out recently from Spartan Press and Jason. Yes, I grew up in Western New York.
That is a really good cover, yeah.
Yeah, I took that down in the gorge, the Niagara Gorge.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I was only about 15, 20 feet away. I was behind some shrubs and it never saw me. I actually got this is 14 years ago, in lower resolution camera. I actually got a video of it catching a fish too.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay, held erect. In a slipstream, almost a daydream. Eagle overhead on a sycamore branch, watches, waits as I drift by, my gaze held high, not daring to shift or lift my paddle. I slowly raise my lens as the raptor drops to the water, a perfect snatch. Its catch firmly grasped, its hope. It hops to the shore, gorges itself as my own hunger is satisfied. Camera safely stowed, I go on my way. Sated, the eagle returns to the sycamore, its hold on me, just a memory.
I am A-OK not reading.
I'd love to hear you read one of the times.
That's what John wants.
If John's here, and so let's do it. I'll do one or two.
Okay, and then we are going to close out this reading with Justin Ham. Justin.
I'll do maybe two from, I've got a new book / chat book. It's a shorter one coming out from Spartan Press. It's called Oh Death. And I'll pre-apologize a little bit. So I did a very intentional thing. The poems, I usually write very tightly punctuated poems. Poems that are, I would consider them plain spoken. That's kind of my style. And I wanted to do something different. I've done 50 or 60 events since Drinking Guinness with the Dead came out in support of that book. And one of the things that I noticed is once you get a good set list and you keep rolling, it's easy to go into kind of automatic mode at a reading. And you get pretty good at the inflections, when people are gonna laugh and they're gonna, oh, right? And which is cool, but at the same time, you're not getting much out of that at that point. And so these new poems that I've written, they don't have any punctuation. They're text blocks. And so the idea being that for me to be able to perform them for you, I have to be locked in, or I'm gonna screw it up all over the place because I haven't given myself any punctuation to run it by. But the second thing is this. Each night that I might read this, the inflection or the emphasis could be anywhere because I don't have any punctuation telling me that's where to put it, right? So I gotta be locked in, I have to be in the moment in order to perform them. So what might happen here, since I haven't been performing these, is I might make sense, or you might just hear me stumble a bunch knowing that this is the first time I'm reading them. So,
It's okay.
yeah, well I appreciate it, and this is a great place among friends to debut some of these. So let's do Secret Boy. This one is a little bit personal, but we lost you that August back to school sail, slow slur of baseball broadcast, wildflower clusters like paint spilled over brown Missouri prairie. There were so many people to call. Your sisters had only just forgiven us and decided you might fit in. There were naming wars in the evening, side-eye declarations of who you would favor most. Of course, it would have been me. It is never anything good when the doctor leads with "I'm sorry," words that can actually be seen trailing from slow motion mouth, even softly spoken, even tenderly intended, still arcing with menace toward unready ears. How many times have you been born since that day, incubated in the shelter of my imagination, milk fed by your mother's wish memory? A and S sometimes glance down as we pose family portraits. We know they wonder. I mourn you in wild children's stories like those I improvised when A and S were small, ukulele ringing, minor chords, voice rising and falling, a preacher, a Sesame Street preacher. I give my stories to students in the library now, choosing the best behaved as main characters. I wish just once I could see your eyes, astonished as I reveal near the end, you are the secret brave one. You are the one who returns through trapdoor. It's you who visits the cobwebby dark underneath and returns fists full of everything that was taken. Banjo frogs. You guys know the folk motif of the banjo playing frog. So I'm kind of obsessed with them. But banjo frogs, which are also a real frog in Australia. There's a real frog that's a banjo frog. That's incredible. So it's totally different. Okay. In southeastern Australia, frogs carry their banjos in their throats. Here in America, we force them to spend much of their 10-year lifespan learning to play with webbed toes, so our folk artists might affix them to t-shirts and bolo ties of quaint Appalachian sheep appeal. We Americans love for our animals to perform human tricks. This is why our elephants can paint land. Dogs can operate the same electronic tablets as our children. It is also why some of our legislators have learned to spell and even sign their own name, which they only do when it enriches themselves or inflicts social and financial harm on others. I'll be honest, I don't always recognize this land around me anymore, and I am not especially old. Sometimes in the summer, I sit outside on the porch and pick out the first part of dueling banjos again and again to myself. It is the only part of the song I could ever master. It used to be a source of some embarrassment. These strange days, it seems like more than enough to drive home the point. These are not. These are the prose poem portion. There are erasures as well.
No, it's just you do tend to let people know what you're reading.
Yeah, whenever I do the erasures, I'll tell you the source, because the source tends to be important, because I chose like some very well-known authors, and so who they are kind of casts some, because if you're playing with irony, it helps to know it's Edgar Allan Poe, that it's the irony is playing against. Yeah, so, and I'll do those. Communion for John Dorsey, Jason Reberg, and Abraham Smith, in commemoration of a really cool little tour that we got to do earlier this summer. I'll just close with this one. Late night, sweat-soaked Ozarks, so dark, unclear if we have even been born. 4 chairs, 4 porch-sitting poets, room in the center for the Holy Spirit to stretch out and hum. In the black forest distance, the Gasconade, ancient muddy home to drowned rat, seraph, and wide-eyed bass. Rain-swollen, raging her way home to her Missouri River mouth, there comes a rare passage of headlights near the road. The faintest myth of civilization, a laugh, a cough, a laugh, a short silence before someone in speaker speaks in tongues of fire. A lonesome armadillo scuttles into a small circle of moonlight to give birth to the first mystery. Someone says Wordsworth, Quixote, Townes Van Zandt. Someone else says cancer. Someone passes me a stringed instrument and an open bottle of beer. Yeah. Thanks, y'all. Thanks for having me down again.
Was that string? string dance we're gonna do.
That was a ukulele.
We have
I know,
one
it's awesome.
question before we wrap this up. Tim, Eva wants to know what was the 5-minute song?
Oh, roadside assistance.
Oh,
That
that
is
was
great.
great.
That's a great.
Yeah.
They always say that though, right?
Same
The ones that come in first are like
That's
super
honestly
bangers.
my favorite.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
such
it's
a
a great
banger,
song.
dude.
I actually wrote that. I knew that I was teaching summer school in the morning. I was recording in the afternoon, and I had like a little bit of time before class started. And I actually wrote that in 5 minutes without even having.
That was fantastic.
That's an insight that you won't get from our friends at the Cowboy Revolution. Only right here. So thank you guys again for being here. Like I said, September 21st at 6 o'clock will be the next time we're here, which is a Saturday with Richard. So I look forward to that. And like Jason was talking about, the St. Louis Poetry Con. I will get the name right.
Regardless, the con is apparently on.
Well, I was gonna say like that's going on in October. We have an event here. I just gave Jason 140 of my new poems, so those will be out in October too. So a lot going on. So thank you guys for being here again, and hopefully I'll see you all again soon.
Woo!
Yeah.
Thank you, Chad Dorsey.